AEW is a failure of a company. That is what I would say if it hasn't become one of my favorite pro wrestling promotions. The storytelling, the athleticism, the indie feel of All Elite Wrestling has created one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world in just 4 short years. But that doesn't mean that it's been solely smooth sailing for Tony Khan and the Elite. Booking missteps, failure to capitalize on momentum, and what were they thinking decisions will happen in any wrestling company, and that is no different for the Land of Elite. So as we reach the next incarnation of the pay-per-view that started it all, and since negative videos tend to do well, let's go all in on the times AEW missed the mark. This is Extreme League Wrestling, and here are the biggest failures of All Elite Wrestling. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Number 10, the Exploding Barbed Wire Death Match. The rivalry between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley in an AEW squared circle is certified to give you a 4-star outing regardless of the situation. This angle that saw the birth of the pro wrestling god Kenny Omega saw him, with the help of Don Callis, steal the AEW World title from Jon Moxley. This feud was set to have an explosive ending at AEW Revolution, as the two men were set to face off in an exploding barbed wire death match. Everyone had the confidence that this match would follow some of the other critically acclaimed work both men have had, both stateside and in Japan, given the stipulation. As the final moments of the match unfolded, Omega left Moxley in the middle of the ring as the timer was about to hit 0. Here, an explosion was set to detonate, as Moxley was for sure left to perish. This was until his former best friend Eddie Kingston snapped out of his selfish ways and tried to shield Mox from the impending doom, which is a great emotional moment until what actually transpired. What was meant to be a giant explosion altering both men forever was simply just smoke and sparklers. The explosion was a dud, but both men, the consummate professionals that they are, still sold it like they just went through a Die Hard movie. Test runs from earlier in the day apparently went off without a hitch, but some last-minute changes from the bosses of the company All Elite Wrestling hired to set off the explosives had some last-minute changes. These alterations turned an epic spectacular into the laughingstock of the wrestling world. It was retconned the following Dynamite, saying that Kenny Omega was the one who messed with the explosives to make Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston look like fools. Which we all know is totally true, right? I just hope Tony Khan got his money back. Number 9, Shaquille O'Neal. Celebrity matches are nothing new in the world of professional wrestling, and all kindness in my heart for non-wrestlers who decide to step in the ring, they can truly be hit or miss. One celebrity that was rumored to be preparing for an in-ring debut was NBA champion Shaq. Unfortunately, his long-rumored match with the Big Show never truly happened in the land of McMahon. So when a debuting Jade Cargill told Cody Rhodes she had Shaquille O'Neal in her corner, needless to say, this was met with a resounding "what?" Clunky build aside, the match was actually fairly entertaining. The multiple-time NBA champion and pizza salesman and car insurance salesman and icy hot salesman was no slouch in the ring. AEW even set up for a match to happen after this one. As the backstage interviewers went into the ambulance Shaquille O'Neal was perceived to be in, he vanished. We were left with an enticing cliffhanger with Shaq's time in the Land of Elite, so it had to not be over yet. What epic series of matches could the American Nightmare put on with Superman himself? Well, none actually. The next week we saw no update on Shaquille O'Neal or his whereabouts. It truly is a shame to see this all drop, because Shaquille O'Neal could have a decent future as a professional wrestler if he wanted to. How dare Chris Jericho steal the Black Tornado as his finisher? Number 8, Hangman Page's AEW title reign. Any wrestling booker will tell you booking a heel champion versus a triumphant white meat babyface is a tried and true tested recipe for success for long-term booking. This was most definitely the case for Tony Khan with the rise of Hangman Adam Page. Page's 3-year-long storyline did not only see him finally best his personal demons, but finally best his former best friend and tag team partner, the pro wrestling god Kenny Omega. The Hanger finally gaining the confidence to win the AEW World title will forever be within the minds of any AEW fan. While a wonderful moment for sure, the subsequent title reign did leave much to be desired. Sure, Hangman Page had pretty solid defenses with the likes of Adam Cole and Lance Archer, but the long-term storytelling of the past that crowned Hanger seemed to be missing at this point in the AEW title picture. Not to also mention his final title feud with CM Punk opened a Pandora's box of conflicts that are still being felt in All Elite Wrestling till this day. Wow, I wonder if anyone has ever made a video breaking down that entire situation. Page is by no means past his prime, and I'm sure he'll have another go at AEW's top prize. Just don't let CM Punk know I said that. God knows I don't need him shooting on me too. Number 7, Awesome Kong. So you mean to tell me you have Awesome Kong on your payroll, the woman who revolutionized women's wrestling in the golden age of TNA alongside Gail Kim, and you put her in the Nightmare Collective? No disrespect to any of the people involved, but when you have stablemates like Mel and Brandy Rhodes and Luther, they're not exactly gonna light up the Twitter fingers of your vocal AEW fan base. This, combined with a lot of backstage factors as well as personal reasons, led to Awesome Kong retiring shortly after AEW's formation. There are a million ways to book her better. Oh, hey, stop right there. I see what you're doing. You're about to go into the comments section talking about the AEW women's division. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Number 6, the 4 pillars. As a young company, you'll always need young talent to ensure the longevity of your roster, but it is truly rare to see a company in its infancy state which performers are the future of the brand. Dubbed the 4 pillars, Maxwell Jacob Freeman, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Jungle Boy Jack Perry were earmarked for success in AEW very early on. The company has even hosted the first ever match between all 4 men at this past year's Double or Nothing for the AEW World title. Great match aside, this label has done more to hinder some of the talents themselves than elevate them at this point. While MJF and Allin have been able to soar within their popularity working both sides of the locker room, Sammy has been able to produce some great in-ring showings but has yet to really find a storyline to sink his teeth into to reach the heights a pillar should. Jack Perry has been able to see some great strides during his feuds with former tag partner Luchasaurus and former mentor Christian Cage. Outside of that, there hasn't been really much for the now Jungle Man to hang on to. While his heel turn was needed, it's left much to be desired. Putting that amount of pressure early on into somebody else's career could do more to harm them than per se allowing them to find their own footing within the roster, or even within the world of professional wrestling. Not to also mention, there's a locker room of talented men and women that could be the future of AEW. The likes of Willow Nightingale, Ricky Starks, Top Flight, and Sky Blue come to mind first here. The Next Big Thing moniker really has only worked for a handful of people, and I'm sorry, there's only one Brock Lesnar, and there's only one Danhausen. Number 5, the backstage environment. Backstage fighting in AEW, the next thing you're going to tell me is Hornswoggle isn't Vince McMahon's son. In the beginning, AEW was seen as a paradise compared to the old guard of WWE, where everyone got along, no wishing well in future endeavors due to cost cutting, and no backstage qualms, right? Well, during the dark times of 2022, the combat happened a little bit more than outside the ring. I like a backstage brawl in SmackDown vs. Raw as much as the next guy, but at this point it had gotten a bit ridiculous. Whether it was Eddie Kingston pie facing Sammy Guevara, Thunder Rosa somehow pissing off every member of the AEW women's locker room, hell, even Pepsi Phil and the EVPs got in on the action. While the name of the game is in fact fighting, you normally don't need to see a human resources representative ringside during a street fight. It's not a great look for your company, and I'm glad to see that maybe the tide is starting to turn in this trend. Number 4, the TNT title. Listen, I'm one for taters. Fries, tots, hash browns, mash 'em, boil 'em, put 'em in a stew, etc. I love a good hot potato, but you shouldn't treat your titles like that. The lineage of the TNT title started fantastically with Cody Rhodes' Open Challenge. This was continued with the reigns of the great Brody Lee, Darby Allin, and God's gift to us all, Miro. After Sammy Guevara defeated the best man for the strap, this started the slow decline of this title's great reputation. And while by this is no means the Spanish God's fault, this is where we start to see the hot potatoing of the title in our current timeline. Title holders being changed with no rhyme or reason really did make the belt lose a lot of its luster. And while the TNT title was able to elevate previous names explained, Wardlow, Scorpio Sky, and Powerhouse Hobbs did not get the same luster from the title, unfortunately. Christian Cage and Luchasaurus have been on a bit of a roll on Collision with the TNT title, and hopefully this will bring some more prestige back to the strap. Number 3, Collision. Needless to say, with their monstrous roster, AEW was at some point going to need to develop a second major show to give everybody adequate airtime. I know what you might be thinking then why is Collision on here? Well, it's mainly for the timing of the show. I'm not fully against CM Punk being the focal point of Collision. I mean, come on, how else are you going to be able to get people to stay home on a Saturday night at 8 p.m.? I mean, unless you're me. The product showcase has been great, and I love seeing Andrade El Idolo, Malachi Black, and Miro very consistently. But having announcementception over here with non-blinking Tony Khan really did drag out the announcement of the show. This, on top of the premiere episode being CM Punk's return after the all-out brawlout, divisive I think would be a kind word. I truly do hope Collision is successful past all the CM Punk drama that seems to be coming up about it. This roster is too talented to just waste their time on Rampage. I personally would love to go to Collision, but wait, I've been criticizing CM Punk and Collision. Does that mean I'm banned? Number 2, Dark Order. The untimely and tragic death of Mr. Brody Lee shocked the wrestling world to say the least. Under his leadership, Dark Order became a focal point of AEW programming. But after the extremely heart-wrenching tribute show to celebrate the life of John Hubert, Dark Order seemed to be forgotten about. The group just seemed lost without Brody, and understandably so. I would say their highest high past that point is their instrumental role to Hangman Page beating Kenny Omega for the AEW World title. And of course, they were always a treat on being the elite, and they made me eat at Chili's way more than I usually do. As time passes though, the entire group has been kind of MIA, seeing members not only leave the group, but leave the company entirely, which is a shame to see because at the time during the pandemic, Evil Uno and Stu Grayson were well booked #1 contenders for the tag titles. Not all is lost though, with Stu Grayson rejoining AEW and feuding with his former faction mates over in Ring of Honor. The group put on a pretty solid Trios Without Honor match at this last ROH pay-per-view against The Righteous. Due to their legacy, I feel like Dark Order will always have a place in AEW, but I think Tony Khan really dropped the ball with the group's potential. And finally, the #1 biggest AEW mistake so far, the women's division. Ice Cold Takes here, get your ice cold takes. Yeah, of course this is #1, what else did you think it was gonna be? It is probably the coldest take in all of internet wrestling discourse, but the AEW's women's roster is laughably underutilized. We've gone through the same song and dance for the past 4 years. The internet is increasingly critical of Tony Khan's inability to book women's wrestling, in which in response he books a hot new women's storyline that goes for about a month. After that story has run its course, the women's division is relegated to the cooldown spot right before the main event on Dynamite, and the cycle continues. The horse has been beaten into the core of the earth. Not to take away the strides that the company has made. Just look at the all-time feud that defied Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa's careers, Jade Cargill becoming a megastar, and the rise of Athena and Willow Nightingale, with the former two even headlining the last ROH pay-per-view and putting on a sleeper match of the year candidate. To be fair, there has been a lot of speed bumps for the women's division that are outside of anyone's control. Regardless though, meaningless storylines and matches that go nowhere do no one any good. All Elite Wrestling has zero excuse. They can learn from their competition's history, and Lord knows the talent on the roster deserves more to be given to them. You know it doesn't need more though? The whole CM Punk and Elite drama. If you want to learn more about that, go ahead and click the title card right here. And that has been our top 10 AEW failures. What do you think AEW needs to do better in? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. This has been Extreme League Wrestling, and we'll catch you next time.